Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss pre-market video for Monday, August 4th, 2025. I am Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Happy Monday, everyone. Here's a look at the ES in the daily time frame. The previous couple of sessions here, big time meltdown days here, big outside day down Thursday after Fed day. You had a big time continuation on a Friday with a huge impulsive sell-off down. This is a big sell-off here, and of course, in the weekly time frame here, big outside bar down. Is it a week one rejection, day one rejection? How much more weakness do we get? This is going to be very important how we begin the week. That strong high so far this strong low here and snapping back. How much do we snap back? Can we get back to the midpoint of the previous week's range? That's 63.54. Can we reach 63.54 at some point here today, tomorrow, before we drop or before we see another move? Because that would give us a new key range at these levels, and then we would have new key levels here to work with, new targets to work with, new areas for traps and reversals. And so we'll see if we can get that midpoint here. And again, that is 63.54. Can we get that level here at some point today? That midpoint from the Friday session will be very important. If we can push through there, it opens things up. But as of right now, given the sell-off we've seen the last couple of days, this type of pullback here could be ripe for bears looking to defend and rotate this thing back down. If we start dropping back through 62.80, 62.75, it's really going to open up the potential for an inverted check mark day down, and we could be looking at a lot more selling pressure ahead. So at some point here, we're trying to find a strong low and a bounce back for a key range. But if we keep on going to the downside, we're going to keep finding a low or trying to search lower for a low before we can bounce. So again, big time zone right here. Any failure through 6,200 is a market structure failure, and you have at least 6,000 and as much as 58 that could be ahead. So 6,200 is going to be very, very important here early this month. Looking at the NQ, similar price action out of the NQ, big time selling pressure Thursday after Fed, outside day down, and then a meltdown Friday. That gave us an impulsive pullback here as well. Impulse sell-off 23,310. 23,310 is the previous week's bid point here. If you can get up to that level, we have ourselves a new key range. And you got to get to that level before we kind of see a new low or fade back. And we kind of got to get to that level faster than not. For example, we can't sit here for the next 2 or 3 days and then hit that level. It's not a really good key range. You want to snap back, get it quickly. And now we have ourselves a key range. Can we get that midpoint? 23,310 is the level. But of course, lower value relationship week over week right now. And that means any pullback to begin the week could be sold for an inverted checkmark week down. So keep an eye on the previous session's midpoint here. If it finds acceptance through there, we have a shot to go up there and get that 310. Failure here, do we start to see an inverted checkmark week down, or at least a day down? That could bring new lows up ahead. Like that 6,200 level in the ES, the similar level here, 22,500. A failure here, and you're opening up a move that can take you back down to about 20,500 with a midpoint that would take us right between those two levels at 21.5. So you have those three levels right there. You break this level, there's a shot to go all the way across this zone and then maybe back. So this level very, very important here to begin August. All right, let's take a look here at crude oil. Crude's been back and forth here a bit. Big time push to the upside. Came right into 70, and we've been talking about 70 for a while here, that it needed to push through 70 to open up the next level up. Failure there, and you're dropping right back towards 64, and that's been the 6-point range that we've been within for the last couple of months now, at least 6-7 weeks. So this market right now is still within that range. It has a little bit of an expanding quality now. See here, here, and here. A little bit of an expanding quality here now on that top end. And then you have this lower end that's almost like this. So perhaps we drop down a little bit into 63. Maybe we come back and keep it in here. So maybe as low as 63 and a quarter or so. If we drop down, 64s have been big time support, so any test at 64 could even be in play. But right now it looks like we're driving until we can find a low and snap back and stay in the range for now. Looking at gold futures, this one's up about 0.4% right now. Big time rally on Friday as everything else was dropping in a big way. Again, that continues to show just the defensive nature here of gold and how it continues to be the asset of choice right now. If the market's going down, this thing's going up. Look at the last couple of years, this thing's going up anyway. And as I mentioned before, this one here building for a massive expansion at some point. 500 point back in, multiple months of compression, big time compression toward the apex of this pattern. Everything suggests a continuation to the upside at some point. Now, do we get that break now or later? That's debatable here. Of course, once we see an expansion day or a transition day through 3450 rather, you have about a 500 point rally that could be in play toward 39.5. That would be huge. Now again, do we get a pullback first and continue to chop around? Maybe we do. So I'm not sure when that expansion will occur, but we'll be watching for expansion at some point. Big time potential out of this one. Now, if we did see a failure, it would look like a failed range expansion. Maybe this thing tries, and then bam, it gets crushed. That would be a massive failure and would suggest a push back in and kind of keeping things in the range. So any failed range expansion would be huge at defining a high. Not anticipating that right now, but again, we'll see what we get when we get there. Looking at the YM, this one right here has had a bit of a meltdown here lately. Now, while this market here has been mostly selling off the last couple of days, it had also had a pullback the entire week. Look at that weekly bar. That's your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and this is Friday. That has to be one of the bigger weeks that we've seen in a while. As a matter of fact, we can pull it onto the weekly time frame and just look at the magnitude of that bar and look at where it happened. This is what we've been talking about a while, that up here you wanted to be trimming because at some point here we might see the big bad ugly, that big ugly bar that may play out. Last week, big time stop run week, big outside week down. This week is very similar to some of these weeks here, and you can see that each of those carried with it multiple weeks of weakness as follow through, and of course this one came with capitulation as well. So last couple of times we've made it back at least to 42K here, right here, and now that's your week one rejection. We may pull back a little bit this week, but then bang, do we drop into 42K up ahead. So something to keep in mind here with the YM. Impulse sell-off, last week's midpoint is going to be 44,388. Can we hit that mid before we drop to new lows? That's going to be something to really keep an eye on, as last week's impulse sell-off was tremendous. We get ourselves a key range by pulling back to that 44,388. That's going to be a tremendous key range to work with. Not sure we're going to get there before we drop further, but we'll see. As of right now, lower value relationship, which means starting the week on a little bit of strength, could lead to bears defending and really opening up some selling pressure down the way if this thing gets out of hand. All right, looking at Bitcoin, up 1% right now. This one looks very similar to the YM here. It has sold off the entire week last week. Big high range week, outside week down. Now again, starting the week with a modest bump here to the upside, and that could be seen as an opportunity for bears to defend and drop. Are we headed back to 108, which is basically break even for the quarter? We moved up, hit a strong high, sideways for a little longer than is comfortable here, and when that occurs, you start to see a little bit of exhaustive buyers here that are done holding a position that's not going. You start seeing stop runs, long liquidation, and that's when you fall back. So at least 108 could be in play, and as much as 98 to 100 on this next drop. That's going to be significant. Again, can price recover 116 in the short term? If not, are we seeing some expansion to the downside? Something to keep an eye on there. Lastly, ETH. Up 1.4% right now. Massive squeeze to the upside. Of everything else, this one has had the most bounce back, but also began the year with the most selling pressure alongside Tesla. Now this one here holding right in the bullish Pima trigger zone. Can it find a way to bounce and retest highs, or do we fail at 3,400 here? Failing at 3,400 opens up 28 at the very least, and as much as 22 again. So this could be another massive wave and rotation back down, depending on how this thing plays out. Look at the last few times up here. This is 4,000 right there. The last few times we have seen big time rotations. Each time it has gotten at least to 2,800 on that rotation back down. Are we headed back to 2,800 again before we bounce? How is that going to play out? So again, last few times, once you give up 3,600, you really start to open it up to the downside. We've seen it time and time again. So have we maxed out the upside here? Even though we didn't get 4,000, we got 21 points away from 4,000. 42 was up ahead for a triple off our 1,400. Almost there. Do we get one more wave? We'll see. Again, failing at 34 will open up 28 and perhaps even 22. So we got to keep an eye on that zone very, very closely. All right, that is it for now. We'll see how this plays out heading into the new week of trading. Good luck, trade well, and I'll see you in the trader room. Take care.